Good evening, True to New York sports fans. This is Stephen and Mitchell with The Chill. You're all hockey all the time, or at least at this time, once a week. Mitchell, how you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Steven?
I'm doing pretty good. Right now looking, we got two games going on tonight locally. The Rangers are playing Buffalo. They're at the end of one right now, 2-1. The Islanders are playing Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals, and they're also into 1-1 tied up in that game. So let's get started. First thing let's do, let us wish a happy birthday to the great one, turning 60 years old today, Wayne Gretzky. Mitchell, just what's your favorite Wayne Gretzky memory?
My favorite Wayne Gretzky memory, I think it has to be probably the most, Wayne Gretzky was a little bit before me, but I would say in 97 against the Florida Panthers, he scored that one goal, which was top corner. Obviously, I know his highlights from Edmonton. He's the fastest player to 1,000 points and the second fastest player to 1,000 points. It's just incredible the amount of stats and records that Wayne Gretzky will never break. And I actually asked my dad before, I'm like, does Wayne Gretzky turning 60, is that what's going to feel like to me watching somebody like Tom Brady turn 60, who obviously is in the news a lot right now? So I think I'll have more of an answer for somebody like Tom Brady or Alex Ovechkin than I will for Wayne Gretzky. I kind of missed out on it.
Yeah, you got to bring that Tom Brady thing into it. Well, here's one of the biggest stats for Wayne Gretzky. Points in a season, in the top 10 overall points in a single season. He owns 8 of those spots, including the top 5 individually. Mm-hmm. And the only other player on that list is probably arguably the second greatest player to play, at least in my lifetime, and that's Mario Lemieux with the Penguins. So Wayne Gretzky, happy birthday, 60 years old today. Not really around hockey that much anymore. Still kind of partial owner of the Coyotes. Had a coaching stint there, but once again, happy birthday, Wayne Gretzky. And let's move right into our Icebreakers segment. This is where we go back and forth with some of the big topics of the week. And probably one of the biggest topics that's come out in the NHL is NBC Universal, who owns NBC Sports Network, has decided to shut down NBC Sports at the end of this year. What that means for the NHL is that most of the games, because the NHL still has a broadcast contract with NBC Universal, will be moved over to networks like CNBC, MSNBC, and one of the bigger ones, and probably it's going to be more of a game changer for getting eyes on the product, is that USA Network will be taking on a vast majority of games for the next year. Mitchell, when you heard about this, what was your first thoughts?
The rumor was kind of there for a little while. Not super surprising. I think when you have a pandemic that's never been heard of before, somebody like NBC takes a hurt as well. So while we talked about it last week, that the ratings were high as ever for the first regular season game, and the bubble and the playoff did really well for NBC. I think it's just too much as far as a burden that they're going to be losing. And we kind of saw this probably going to happen anyway with the American TV deal coming up next season, I believe. Mm-hmm. So we'll get a little taste. I know hockey's taking a little more of a presence on ESPN Plus. That's kind of where I'm watching a couple of games every night, falling asleep to a couple of games, I should say. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a change, but it's just going to be a different channel, I think. I think everyone, from what I read, is being moved over. It's just going to not be on NBCSN. So no 212 anymore. We'll watch on 38 if you're on Optimum.
Yeah, no. One thing a lot of people probably don't know is before USA Network was actually the USA Network, and I'm talking late 70s, early 80s, it was actually known as the Madison Square Garden Network, the Madison Square Garden Sports Network. Now, while they didn't necessarily have the Knicks or the Rangers on at that time, it was kind of like a very early version of what ESPN was in its early years, college sports, log throwing competitions, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Stuff that you would see on the quote-unquote Ocho right now.
Yeah.
So moving on, another big thing came out today and is affecting the Rangers right now. Filip Chytil out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. If you saw that hit that he took in the Pittsburgh game, real rough, real. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as 4 to 6 weeks, but it was definitely a hit that made him labor for at least the next 30 seconds getting off the ice, and obviously he did not finish that game. What this does for the Rangers is for the game in Buffalo tonight is that Brandon Lemieux was back in the lineup after having sat out the last game when Colin Blackwell came up, a taxi squad member, and Blackwell actually scored a goal in his first game. A lot of fans and a lot of reports coming out has said that Chytil had taken on sort of the Jesper Fast role of the team. He had a good start to the season. He's been that energy guy, throwing a couple bodies around, and just kind of led the team. Are you interested to see how the Rangers handle this? Do you think they make a trade or anything, or do they just sit out and wait for Chytil to get back?
Yeah, it's a big hit, especially in a 56 game season. 4 to 6 weeks. Now you're coming back mid-March, maybe. I don't think the season's necessarily going to be decided by that point, but you're going to start seeing a playoff picture similar as you do to when you get to usually Thanksgiving. You usually know what the playoffs are starting to turn out to be. It's a big hit because Filip Chytil was playing awesome to start the season. He looked very good. Looked very good with Kakko, especially. And he looked very good while Ryan Strome did not look as good. So you were hoping that Filip Chytil was going to take that next step. You wanted Filip Chytil to be that top six center that he's shown spurts of, and this was his third season, first full-time season. Last year he didn't make the team out of camp. It's a big hit for not only for the Rangers but for Filip Chytil. We'll see how the Rangers do if Ryan Strome could get a little bit of that pizzazz that he had towards the end of last season, and you'll see if somebody like Brett Howden, who kind of like has fallen down the depth chart a little bit in that fourth line role. Let's see if he takes another step forward too, and embraces the opportunity. But it's definitely a huge hit.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge hit. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Rangers make some form of move in the next couple of days to try and replace that spark that Chytil has had.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple guys on the roster that are, I don't want to say expendable, but could definitely be moved for
yeah.
And that actually brings us to our next topic, and probably the biggest topic of the entire week is the Longley Dupuis trade between the Winnipeg Jets and the Columbus Blue Jackets. I followed this, I'm going to call it a situation for the last couple of days, but I know you were very on top of this. So, Mitchell, I'm just going to let you tell everybody what the hell happened in this unusual circumstance.
Yeah, this is a big trade. To give people a little context, Patrik Laine was drafted second overall in 2017 by the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets kind of did what the Rangers did last year, where they jumped up in the draft lottery to pick Patrik Laine, actually. And Pierre-Luc Dubois was a little bit of a surprise being picked third overall that same year by Columbus. Last year, you saw Pierre-Luc Dubois take a big step forward. A lot of people consider him one of the top 10 young centers in the league. Only 22 years old, 23 years old, kind of fallen out of grace in Columbus. We've seen this happen before. Rick Nash, drafted first overall in 2002, did not finish his career. Obviously, as we know, he was a New York Ranger and then finished out a little bit in Boston. We saw Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky both leave the free agency after the Columbus Blue Jackets pushed all their cards into the middle, all their chips into the middle in the playoffs 2 years ago. Patrik Laine also not very happy in Winnipeg. He held out for a little bit of training camp last year. Pierre-Luc Dubois signed very late this year, signed a 2-year, $10 million total contract, but it was apparent in both his play, both how he was talking, that he just wasn't interested in being in Columbus. And I think we've seen this. We haven't really seen this situation in hockey as much before. I mean, obviously, Eric Lindros, you've had certain players kind of hold out, sign offer sheets, but Pierre-Luc Dubois was specifically unhappy playing in Columbus for whatever reason. It's been rumored that it's questions with John Tortorella, the coach. But on his game on Friday night, before he was traded, he was not going after the puck, not interested in the play at all.
I'm glad you actually brought that up. Now, just to give a little more background, we actually signed a 2-year contract right before the start of this season, and basically demanded a trade to get out.
Yeah.
That game that you mentioned, he had less than 6 minutes of ice time, 2 minutes in the first period, none in the third period, none in the second period, and a couple minutes in the third in the overtime. And I mean, I saw some of the highlights, and he looked about as interested as a gopher watching that game. He
Yeah.
did not take any body, did not reach for any pucks, and basically he cut one shift short, and it was the last shift that he had in the first period. Basically, he was out there for 20 seconds, showed no interest, and went right back to the bench for a change. And that's not the type of player you want on a team. Now, the big question is the Rangers were actually interested. And
Yeah.
it seemed like the rumors going around were that they wanted Kakko and Georgiev for Duguay. To me, that's an impossible trade to make. Kakko has shown at the end of the last year and with the playoffs and the beginning of this year, he's shown some growth. Georgiev has been solid considering the Rangers' other goal. Shesterkin has not been. And as we're talking right now, I just noticed it is now 2-2 in the Ranger-Buffalo game. Just scored on a breakaway. I didn't see who actually scored the goal. But Georgiev is in that tonight. I thought it was just way too much to ask. Having a guy that, you would only have him for 2 years. You'd have to re-sign him. And he's already shown that he's not necessarily the most invested.
Yeah, I think he wanted a bigger stage and wasn't getting it in Columbus. Like I said before, he's in the playoffs last year. He showed a lot of promise. He had a hat trick in a big game against Toronto. It's a good trade for both teams. It's one of those that you don't really know what's happening. Going back to Patrik Laine a little bit, Patrik Laine, same kind of thing. Wasn't very interested last year. He shows that he could easily be a 50-goal scorer in the league. He just has a shot that is similar to Alex Ovechkin in his rookie year. You saw that. Last year, I believe he scored 20 of his 30-something goals in the month of November. And he's one of those players that are rare in the NHL, I would say, where if he's not scoring, he's not doing much. He's not as productive as you would like. There's some players in the league where if they're not scoring, Rick Nash was one of them, where Rick Nash could score 40 goals, and if he didn't, he was killing penalties. He was productive on the power play, net for presence, all that stuff. You didn't see that out of Patrik Laine. So it was a 2-for-2 trade. So it was Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was signed for 2 more years and a 3rd-round pick going to Winnipeg, where his father is actually an assistant coach for their minor league team. So there's a little bit of a connection there. Going back to Canada, he's from Montreal. Montreal is also very interested in Pierre-Luc Dubois. I heard over 20 teams called the Columbus Blue Jackets about Pierre-Luc Dubois. A player like this usually doesn't become available, especially at $5 million a year in a pandemic world for the next 2 years. Yes, it's not guaranteed. It's not an 8-year contract. But to get a player like that where he could see and he's still under team control after the next 2 years is huge. Going the other way is Patrik Laine, who, like I said, is a 40-goal scorer, not a center, so not as valuable in terms of trade value. And Jack Roslovic, who actually held out. He's from Columbus. He was also a holdout in Winnipeg. He goes back to Columbus as well. He already signed a 2-year contract. So there's a little bit of a lag. You won't see a Pierre-Luc Dubois play in the first week just because of Canada and their quarantine rules. But it's a pretty fair trade. And we'll see how it plays out. Both teams got a really good player, a top 10 player at their position, and you don't really see trades like that as much.
No, you don't. Not especially at this time of year in a short season like this. So moving on, let's go and talk about our local tier, the Rangers and the Islanders. Neither one really had a good week since we last spoke. We're going to start with the Rangers. I like to look at the Rangers core 4, but over the last couple of days, I think the core 5 is now more accurate. I'm kind of like, well, the Yankees in the 90s and the 2000s had, Jeter, Mo, Posada, Pettit, those types of guys on their team that the team was basically built around. I think the Rangers core 4 is actually not the people that you think they are. It's the young kids that we have coming. Yeah. You're going to see whether it's Shesterkin, it's Fox, it's Lafreniere, it's Kakko. Those guys are what you're going to see in the next 10 years. And I want to throw Miller in there as well. He kind of came in with some praise, but not nearly as much as obviously Lafreniere or Kakko have over the last 2 years. But Miller has been kind of a bright spot over the last week. The 2 games against Pittsburgh, 2 games that you're going to talk about in a second, as Buffalo just scored on the power play to make it 3-2 halfway through the second.
Jack Eichel. Oof.
Jack Eichel, and Miller, of course, was, as I'm talking about him, who took the penalty. Miller has shown growth over the last 2 weeks since this first game where he looked absolutely outclassed, out of place, like he didn't know what he was doing. And the last 2 games against Sidney Crosby, he was shutting down arguably the best player in the world.
Yeah.
So having him now in this core 5 that we're going to see hopefully for the next 5 or 10 years, it is going to be great. It's going to be nice to see the development out of these guys. And the Rangers will go as far as that development goes. Now, going back to Pittsburgh games, I'm going to let you take all that. 2 losses to Pittsburgh in 3-day span, both in heartbreaking fashion.
Yeah, so the Rangers had a 3-1 lead going into the third period on Friday, I believe.
Sunday. They did play Friday and Sunday. Yes.
Friday and Sunday, yeah. So they had a 3-1 lead going into the third period on Friday. Let up 2 goals, not great goals. Goals you've seen the Rangers shut down in this fashion before, end up losing in a shootout in a talent contest. For better or for worse, that's what it was and is. And then you saw them take a 1-0 lead the first time they scored. The second time they've scored first in a game besides the shutout against the Islanders. And they also lost that game as well with a lead going into the third period. So they lost a total of 3 points. Each game is worth 2 points. Unless it goes into overtime, then it's a 3-point game in the NHL, which is a little more tedious this year because you're playing everyone within your division, so you don't like those 3-point games as much. Going back to the original point, the Rangers lost 3 points after holding the lead going into the third period in 5 games so far this year. They lost a total of 4 points all of last season, season that was cut short in March. So I believe close to 70 games. I think there's 2 reasons for this. I think one, we've seen the Rangers who had an insane stat during the Henrik Lundqvist prime era where they've lost, I think it was up to 92, 1-2 they were with a lead going into the second period, a crazy stat like that. So I think we're used to seeing the Rangers shut down between John Tortorella and Alain Vigneault, shut down at the end of third periods and bunkered down. And you had the Dan Giraudis and the Ryan McDonoughs diving for pucks. I think it's you got younger and you lost players like Jesper Fast and Mark Stahl and players from that era where they would bunker down towards the end of games. And you're also
all shot blocking, and that's what they learned.
And David Quinn has gotten a team. The coach of the New York Rangers has gotten a team that's gotten younger every year. They're the youngest team in the league this year by over a year. You have kids that just haven't played in NHL before. That was the first time they played against Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, who, like you said before, I'll go back to Keandre Miller too, looked awesome against Sidney Crosby. But you have a lot of players, and you have a goalie that, while looked very good last year and deserved all the credit, and the reason why Henrik Lundqvist is not here anymore, it's still his first year. Even though there's no fans, there's still an immense amount of pressure on him. The throne that he's taking over, as you could say, looms large. And I think Igor Shesterkin, while it's a little bit of it's a hard start with no training camp and no preseason hockey, I think it's just tough, and that's the reason why you're going to see this young team squander leads going into the third period, and they're going to have to. It's just a learning curve, just like anything else with a young team.
Yeah. And I got to put some blame on the veterans, and we say veterans, they're not necessarily that old, but guys like Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kreider, they just didn't seem to show up a little bit during those 2 games. They got goals. The Rangers got goals from outside of those 3. Pavel Buchnevich, he looked great, except he just couldn't finish at all. Mm-hmm. And as we're talking, I'm just going to update the Islanders just scored on the power play. Matthew Barzal to make it 2-1. Getting halfway through the second in that game as well. Back to the Rangers and the Pittsburgh games. The veterans just didn't show up. And what's surprising because of that is, Coach Quinn, he's a rookie coach. We know this. He comes out of college and stuff like that. So my question is can he actually speak to these veteran players? Does he actually get them to buy into the system that he's working in? And I got to put the blame on the veterans, the coach for not getting these guys, not being up for these 2 games. These are 2 big games against a team that they're going to be fighting for. Pittsburgh is not as good as they have been last few.
Yeah.
They're going to be middle of the pack, so they might be the last playoff spot. They might be that team that the Rangers lose out the playoff spot to if the Rangers are able to turn this around. And moving on, one thing that needs to turn around is Shesterkin gave up a lot of softies in that series, that 2-game series, including the game winner on Sunday night. He actually made the save. The puck hit his stick and bounced over and went behind him. And you can't give up goals like that, especially when you're a young team, because it completely deflates you. And that's the biggest issue that I have from those 2 games. There were bright spots. Keandre Miller, even the kid Blackwell from the taxi squad getting his first goal as a Ranger. That was great. And they were in it for 2 periods, 2.5 periods each game. And then they just fell behind.
What we've seen that hurt the Rangers tonight is they didn't take a single penalty on Sunday and tonight, that they were already taking 3. Yep. So they just took the third right as we speak. And a team that lost their 2 best penalty killers, I would say, Jesper Faust and Mark Stahl. It's just another adjustment where they haven't really. When you don't take a penalty on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Penguins, you're not practicing the penalty kill either. Right. So I think we're seeing, as the season goes on, you're going to start seeing the Rangers make progress. But in the beginning, because of the youngest team in the league that hasn't played together, that you have your 3, Filipino is one of the 4th, 5th ranked Ranger forwards as far as games played for the Rangers. So, and he's 22 years old, 21 years old. So I think as the season goes on, as long as they stay healthy and these guys get more reps together and more games together and they start gelling a little bit, you'll see progress. But it's just one lesson after another that you thought, they would have learned a little more last year, but now you're adding 3 more rookies into the lineup. So that makes a big difference.
The one thing that really bothers me about this whole thing is the 3 games that they played against Carolina in the playoffs last year. They look pretty much the same that they look like right now, and it was a big opportunity, a missed opportunity in my eyes, especially when you have guys like Panarin and Spadagen that were as hot as they were, to not be able to step up for that 3-game series, and now it looks like they're not stepping up to start this season. We all know last year they started out slow. They came up towards the middle of the year, January, February, they started really getting into it. But at some point, your veterans have to come out and say, listen, we're here, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
We don't know how good we are, so let's just be the best we can. And now I don't see that coming from the veterans, and that's something that, in my eyes, really has to change.
Definitely, I totally agree.
Moving on to the other team in the area, as I mentioned in the first episode that we had broadcast live, I'm a huge horse racing fan, so I will always refer to the Islanders' new arena as the Belmont Arena. And to pull a horse racing term, the final furlong for the Islanders, it really is the final furlong for the Islanders. They made it to the conference finals last year. It's Stanley Cup finals or better or bust for them right now. And they have not started off that way. Right now, they do have a 2-1 lead over the Capitals with 8:50 to go in the 3rd period. But the Islanders, Matthew Barzal scored a goal. He needs to shoot the puck more. They need to score more goals. I'm going to bring out the stat that is really
jarring.
Really jarring. Right now, the Islanders are last in the league with goals for. They only have 9 goals in 5 games. And the only team, quote unquote, that is tied with them is Carolina. They have 9 goals, but they have 9 goals in 3 games. So the Islanders are last in the league in goals for, and in goals against, which the Islanders excel at. I mean, I'm not going to mince words there. In 5 games, they've only given up 8 goals, which puts them 4th in the league in goals against. Right. So their defense is strong. They're just not scoring. And Matthew Barzal, we talked about it last time, he needs to shoot the puck more. He's got 1 goal a day. They had a rough week, and it seems like I watch the Islanders as much as I can. If there's a Ranger game on, it kind of takes precedent over that. Mm-hmm. So I catch like the Islanders in 60 and whatnot. The Islanders, they started off the season with a drubbing of the Rangers and then did not show up for game 2 and lost 5-0 to the Rangers. And they went to Boston, beat Boston in a low-scoring game. go to the Devils, play the Devils, beat the Devils, play the Devils again, lose to the Devils. In fact, get shut out. What's going on here? Why are the Islanders, who were such a good team last year, still are, didn't really have much changeover, they win 2 games in a row against the same team? Why can't they show up for the second game? That's my biggest question in regards to that.
Yeah, I think the one stat you've seen right now is the tale of 2 goalies. Semyon Varlamov has given up one of those 8 goals. And Ilya Sorokin, the rookie, who we've said is going to be the future goaltender of the New York Islanders, at least Islander fans would hope so. They hope they finally have that goaltender situation figured out, has given up 7 of them. And I don't necessarily think it's all his fault. I think the Islanders' defense isn't as deep as it was last year with the loss of Boychuk and Taves. And Noah Dobson has not been off to a hot start. But you're seeing teams figure out that, when you play, the Islanders were very hard to play in the playoffs last year, but there was a back and forth game, a back and forth series every series. They went 6 games, they went 7 games. They were tough to play against, and I think that's why teams, for an elongated playoff series. But when you're playing 2-3 games in a row against the same team, if the Islanders play them tough on Friday, that team's going to come back on Sunday, and they're going to be like, okay, we know what we're going to do, especially if you see the different goalie. Which has been the case so far, that the Rangers saw Sorokin, they played much better, and they scored 5 goals against them. So I think you're just seeing a little bit of the Islanders. They didn't inject much into their lineup from last season. We've seen Jean-Gabriel Pageau take a step forward and try to earn that contract and that trade that the Islanders did, Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders did make for him. But besides that, they didn't inject much into their lineup when they really could have. They still don't have that shoot first guy. They still didn't go after Taylor Hall. They didn't go after Jeff Skinner. They didn't go after even Nikita Gusev. Not Nikita Gusev, the one from Florida. I'm missing his name, but one of the KHL players. They didn't go after that shoot first guy, that Patrick Laine type player that they should have been on. And I think that's hurting them, because when guys like Anders Lee, who is a goal scorer, but on a good team, he's on the second. He's in the middle 6 on a good team like Boston, on a good team like Tampa Bay. When those guys aren't going, and Matt Barzal isn't shooting the puck as much as he should be, and isn't the 80-point guy we think he can be, you're going to see them they're going to lose 2-0 games like they did to the Devils, and they should win that game against the Devils. The Devils are a very young team with no starting goaltender right now, and the Islanders put a flat 0 up. So.
No starting goaltender, very young team, but right now they have both the Rangers and the Islanders number, it looks like. Moving on to our goaltending matchup for the entire year, and probably for the next few years going forward, Sorokin versus Shesterkin. Who won for the week, in your opinion? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I guess you could. I don't think either goalie won for the week. Igor played back-to-back games against Pittsburgh, ended up losing both games, won in a shootout. Sorokin only had the 1 start, I believe.
That is correct.
And that was a 2-0 loss to the Devils, where I would say the 1 goal was his fault. The other goal was a snipe by Jack Hughes, who we could touch on a little bit, has looked unreal to start the season. He has 7 points in 5 games. I'm not sure exactly what he's done tonight, but that was a snipe from him on the power play against the Islanders. And then Shesterkin, he made some good saves, but he also, like you said, he let in a couple weaker goals that you're used to seeing the Rangers not give up late in games. So I wouldn't say, I think both goalies are off to slower starts. I think that's, like I've touched on a little bit tonight. That's just the rookie, no preseason games. And when the schedule is tight, it's hard to really get on a roll, especially when the Islanders don't start the same goalie 3 games in a row, no matter who it is. So.
And that's the difference right now between the Islanders and the Rangers. While the Islanders are, like we said, in the final furlong, they are pushing for that conference championship, finals appearance. They're going to be their hot goaltender. The Rangers are pretty much going to live and die by Shesterkin for 2/3 of the games, probably getting another third of it. The rest of the load getting the start tonight. So for the winner for the week, in my opinion, was Semyon Varlamov, because you know what, he had and he played more. He played better, and honestly, based on the stats, he's one of the top goaltenders in the league right now.
He is the top goaltender in the league right now.
Goals against average or something like that right now. So the Islanders probably going to play the hot hand. So we'll go back and forth with this all year, but And Varlamov, definitely the winner of the New York goaltending battle for this week.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we got going on? All right, there's less than 5 minutes to go in the second period right now. Rangers still losing to Buffalo 3-2. Moving over to the Islander game. They were just going on the power play again. Nope, 3 minutes to go in that second period. 2-1 Islanders right now. And a long show today, so we're going to move into our 3 stars of the week. Mitchell, if you don't mind, I will go first on this one because I took vast notes on this right now.
Yeah.
My 3rd star of the week has to be Brandon Sutter, Vancouver. Last night had his first NHL hat trick. That's 3 goals in a game for those hockey fans. It only took him 735 games to get his first hat trick. So Brandon Sutter, first hat trick for the veteran, for the journeyman in his 735th game. 2nd star for the week, Anze Kopitar for LA, 8 points in his last 4 games. LA's looking really good. He's starting off to a great start. I believe they play later on tonight as well. I have the NHL package, so I will probably look onto that game. Let's take a look and see if there's anything else going on tonight. Yes, actually they started already. The Kings, they are 0-0 to the Minnesota Wild in the first period, and my number 1 star is Ty Smith for the New Jersey Devils. 4 points in his last 3 games and a point in every game so far this season as a rookie. The Devils, we have no idea what they're going to be. They're surprising a lot of people right now, down 2-1 to the Flyers halfway through the second period. And just as I noticed, the Capitals have tied it up 2-2 in the Islander Capital game. 2 minutes to go in the third. Mitchell, 2 minutes to go in the second. Mitchell, what were your 3 stars for the week?
Yeah, I'm going to go 3rd star, Blake Wheeler. The Winnipeg Jets, just like we talked about before, just acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois. Blake Wheeler is playing with Mark Scheifele right now, but now he has another big power forward center to play with as well. He already has 8 points on the season, including 5 last week, a 3-assist night against Ottawa. You have Patrick Laine is going to get my 2nd star. He's only played in 1 game so far this year. He has 4 points, I believe, in his first game with Winnipeg, and then was sidelined with an injury. And now I believe as soon as he gets back from the IR, he won't have to quarantine to play for his new team, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And he's going to be in a position to succeed. The GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Jarmo Kekalainen, is also Finnish like Patrick Laine. He's known him since he was a kid. He wanted to draft him in 2017, but couldn't trade up to that number 2 overall pick from number 3. He's going to be put in a position to succeed. We'll see how the relationship with Tortorella goes. But I think Patrick Laine could be very successful in Columbus and then get a huge payday. Because God knows the Columbus Blue Jackets want to keep one of their forwards that they haven't been able to keep. And then my 1st star is Joe Pavelski, who had a rough season last year, rough regular season for the Dallas Stars. Had an awesome playoffs. He tends to show up in the playoffs. He's the highest scoring American forward in the playoffs. He has 7 points in 2 games, I believe, they've played so far. Tyler Seguin is out so far for the Dallas Stars. He's going to be out till mid-March from an injury that he sustained in the playoffs towards the end of August. And Jordy Ben is also out. So Joe Pavelski, it's Joe Pavelski's team right now in Dallas, along with 2 stud defensemen on the back in John Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen, and he's taking the bull by the horns. 36 years old, 35 years old, and still playing at a point per game pace so far. And I believe he'll keep that up until Sagan gets back, and he probably takes a little bit of a backseat. But they're going to be a tough out. That's going to be a tough division. I think the easiest division right now, like we talked about in our preview, is going to be the North Division as far as what we could predict. But I think the Dallas Stars are going to be a team to reckon with in the Central Division.
Yeah, the North Division, the Scotiabank North Division, Montreal currently sitting on top of that with 4 wins and 2 overtime losses, 10 points. Toronto, the class division, if you ask me, is probably going to run away with it. 5 wins and 2 losses, 10 points, tied with them. And Winnipeg, the team we're going to follow now because of the Dubois Laine trade. 6 game plays, 4 and 2 for 8 points. Moving on to the Discover Central Division. Tampa Bay finally lost. They have played 4 games. They now have had a bit of a break due to COVID related issues for different teams that they were playing against them themselves.
Yeah.
Columbus, right behind them, 6 games played, 2-2 for 6 points. The big surprise, the still undefeated Florida Panthers, 2 games played, 2 wins. Of course, they're a little behind because of the COVID issues. Dallas also quote unquote undefeated as well, 2-2. They are playing tonight. They're playing tonight, and let me just get the scores. Let's see where we are around the league right now.
Yeah,
Bruins over the Penguins. Brad Marchand and Richie have the goals for Boston. It's 3-2 Rangers versus Sabres. 2-2 in the Devils Flyers game. Jamie Van Riemsdyk, both goals for Philadelphia. Travis Zajac just scored a little while ago to tie it up for the Devils. The Islanders, we mentioned Matt Barzal had the second goal for the Islanders. Dobinson had the first one. Carlson and Sprong, the goal scorers for Washington right now. And here is our undefeated Panthers versus Blue Jackets, tied 2-2 at the end of the second. Barkov had a goal for Florida, and I don't recognize anybody on Columbus right now. What else we got? We got Blackhawks. They're leading 1-0 with Strome with their only goal. The Oilers 3-1 lead over the Jets right now. That's coming up to the end of the first. Kings and Wild are 0-0. And then we got 4 more games tonight.
Yeah, schedule's a little unbalanced. There was one game last night. You saw a 7-1 game between the Canucks and the Senators. Where Elias Pettersson, who Petey, they like to call him in Vancouver, he's off to a little bit of a hard start. They had 7 goals last night. Elias Pettersson, who was up for Rookie of the Year, one of the reasons why the Vancouver Canucks made it as far as they did the past 2 years. He was a -1 with 0 points last night in a 7-1 win.
In a win.
He just switched agents too. He's going to have a contract up at the end of the year and was looking to get a pretty big payday. And right now it's not off to a hot start. Like I said, a little bit of imbalance in the schedule, though. 14 games tonight, 1 game last night, then 2 games tomorrow night. So we'll start to get into a groove a little bit. Thursday again, too, you have, I think, 13 or 14 games.
Most of these teams are playing every other day. In fact, there's an Islanders schedule the next 2 weeks. Is basically every other day they play.
Yeah.
Probably what should be the most entertaining game of the night outside of the New York area. You got St. Louis versus Vegas. Our house teams, the defending 2 seasons ago Stanley Cup champion, the St. Louis Blues, and the perennial contender in the Vegas Golden Knights. 2 of the classes of that West Division.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. The Vegas Golden Knights don't have a coach tonight. There was a positive test on their coaching staff. Their GM Kelly McCrimmon will be on the bench, and I believe they're calling up the AHL coaching staff. We'll see how long they're out for. We've seen some. We haven't really touched on it much because it's just news, as the kind of news that you hear, and we're kind of try to keep it more focused on hockey. But the Washington Capitals had a little bit of a COVID problem, where they had to sit both Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and then their goaltender Ilya Samsonov. Actually tested positive. We've seen situations with the Carolina Hurricanes where games have canceled. The Dallas Stars finally started early last week, but they didn't get to start their season on time. So the NHL is doing it a little bit differently than the NBA and football. They're doing it similar to baseball, where they're not doing rapid testing. They're doing PCR testing. So you're going to see situations where, I think they're canceling games right now depending on the amount of positive tests. And you're going to see situations where tests come back. You're similar to Justin Turner in Game 7 of the World Series. He got pulled out in the middle of the game. You might see a situation like that this season where, depending on how things go, and they're looking at vaccine possibilities for the players, whether it's a new version of a vaccine that the NHLPA is willing to try out or whatever, but they're doing it a little bit differently than the NBA and the NFL when they were doing rapid testing. There's a lot less false positives this way, as we know. And that's just how they're doing it. So right now they're doing daily testing, but PCR testing. The NBA, I think they're talking about doing rapid testing up to 3 times a day, which not only is tedious and annoying for the players, of course they agreed to it, but it starts to get expensive in the NBA too, which isn't as in deep of trouble as the NHL, like we talked about with the gate being 50% of the NHL's revenue. But you're going to see situations like the Capitals where they didn't cancel games, but they were missing their entire top line and their starter goaltender, and you're going to see canceled games.
Yeah, and especially with the way that the schedule is condensed as much as it is, the turnaround is not good. Like you see, guys that could be out for a week, all of a sudden they're out for 5 games because you're playing every other day. And just going through the Rangers schedule for the next week, they have again Buffalo on Thursday. Then they get to go, quote unquote, home for 2 games against the Penguins, with a game on Saturday and then the following Monday, which is the 1st of February. They actually get a 2-day break. I forgot about this. They get a 2-day break, play the Capitals at home, and then 1 game against the Capitals and then 1 game against the Devils the Saturday before the Super Bowl, and then the Monday after the Super Bowl play the Islanders again. For the Islanders, let's bring up their schedule. I know they have a very tough schedule this coming week. Let's do it right here and go back to the end of January. We've got Capitals tonight and Thursday, Philly on Saturday and Sunday, back-to-back days against the same team in Philadelphia. Not even a chance to get a home in. And then they get 2 freebies against the Buffalo Sabres the first week of February. And then one we'll have our next broadcast on Tuesday night. And then they get the Rangers again that Monday after the Super Bowl. So, Mitch, you got any other thoughts about what's going on in the NHL season right now?
I would say we should touch on Adam Fox a little bit.
Okay.
Adam Fox, the Rangers acquired him from the Carolina Hurricanes at the end of the 2018-2019 season. Last year was his rookie year. Was overshadowed a little bit by Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes, who were first-round picks, kind of the new toys on the block. But Adam Fox was right up there, I think 4th in the Rookie of the Year voting. He has 5 points already in 5 games. I don't believe he has a point tonight. I'm not 100% sure. He's right up there. I think it's there. I mean, we're obviously biased for both Ranger fans, but it's arguable that he's one of the top 10 defensemen in the league as far as he puts up points. He's taken the #1 spot on the power play, the quarterback on the power play, away from Tony DeAngelo, and he's not going to give it back. So he's going to get an increase in points there anyway. He had 40-something points last year without having time on that first power play unit. That was very good for the Rangers last year. The Rangers acquired him for 2 second-round picks, which at this point, if you're going to get a defenseman that's top 10 in the league for 2 second-round picks, it's part of the process, which we've heard work in some situations and not in others. But the Rangers, they sold off. They traded for as much trade equity as possible. They've drafted a ton with their picks, and they've also traded some away. And Adam Fox is one of the results of trading away. I believe Michael Grabner is one of those second-round picks, and I believe the other second-round pick was their own. They get Adam Fox, who is a mainstay on this Rangers team for the foreseeable future, and they paid Jacob Trouba, not knowing what Adam Fox would be. But I think Adam Fox is very quickly going to be the #1 defenseman on this team.
75 NHL career games so far, 9 goals, 38 assists, 47 points with a plus-minus of 23 so far this year in 5 games. 5 points with a plus-minus of just +1. That, unfortunately, is due to Rangers not winning a whole lot of games. Goals, especially a lot of even strength goals.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Mitch, it's 8:45 now, so we're going to get ready for the 3rd period. I'd like to thank you guys for coming on with us again this week. We should be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, as Jiu-Jitsu New York Sports presents The Chill with Stephen Mitchell, the longest-running New York-based web program podcast, whatever you want to call it. This was the completed episode 2. We did have a couple pilot episodes that we did not release to the public yet. Maybe we'll include those on our DVD box set in a couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. Collect those.
Our early tribute to Henrik Lundqvist and our early breakdown of this season. Released in that box set. But Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on again. We'll see you guys all next week.
Yeah, everyone have a good one. Enjoy some hockey.